All right, so today we're going to be doing the Red Sox offseason guide. Today is technically November 20th. I'm not sure on the actual publishing date that we'll get this video out, but this video is set to serve as a blueprint for what the Red Sox should do today and moving forward in order to build the next championship team in Boston. Now, I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing. I'm standing up because I'm losing my mind over this fucking Red Sox team because I, frankly, in my opinion, believe that it's like totally insane that they haven't even called me. Like, how rude. Like, how rude. And here's the bottom line. And I'm just going to jump into things. The number one problem with this team is that they went from Dombrowski, who has balls and knew what it took to win, to Heimblum, who has no balls, and then Breslow, who appears to be a worse version of Bloom. So the biggest problem entering this offseason for the Red Sox is that Craig Breslow has done nothing but prove he is Heimblum 2.0, except maybe a worse version. Until that changes, until he gets his head out of his ass and stops looking at the fucking sheet and knows how to actually build a culture in a winning organization, things won't change. Hopefully, maybe he just takes my advice and reads the blueprint. I mean, this really shouldn't be that hard. I mean, the Red Sox are entering this offseason in such an advantageous position. I know I could win a title for this team, but let's just jump into it. First, I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing. First piece of evidence that I need to show you. I always say this line, and I'm going to say it again. Evaluate the evaluator. And nobody ever does it. I don't understand why. Nobody ever evaluates the evaluator. Nobody ever goes back after the fact and said, wow, he was right about this. Wow, he was right about this. Oh, he was wrong about this. Let's just go. And I'm going to show you everything. So I've done a bunch of these videos in the past, right? I've done a bunch of these videos in the past. You can't watch this video and tell me where I was wrong. You can't watch this video and come up with one thing I was wrong about. Here's a quick overall summary. The Danny Jansen trade was bullshit. Let's call it how it is. The Luis Garcia trade was bullshit. The Lucas Sims trade was bullshit. The team didn't make the fucking playoffs, which I said was a real possibility. He threw 10 prospects in the trash, got nothing, and here we are. So before I even begin, I encourage you to go back and watch this video 3 months ago and tell me why you shouldn't trust me with your advice here. Because the truth of the matter is I've been right about this team all the fucking time. And if you go back and watch this video from the last offseason guide, you know that if I was in charge last year, this team, maybe they would have even won the World Series. I mean, so before I even start, watch this video. I'll link it in the description. Watch this video and watch this video and tell me where I've been wrong. You can't and you won't. So, next piece of information. This is Lou Merloni. Now, I am not the biggest fan of Lou Merloni. I do not follow Lou Merloni. I've just seen a couple of clips here and there. I think a lot of the stuff this guy says isn't very smart, but he remains one of the smartest people that covers the team because 99% of the people that cover this team think that Breslow is doing a good job, like the fucking Section 10 fanboys who... Like, here's a big difference between me and the Section 10 fanboys. If the Red Sox offered me a day at Fenway Park, I would have said, go fuck yourself. Because the truth of the matter is this team has done nothing but be pricks and be cheap. Why would I put my name behind an ownership group that's not trying to win? This right here, though, this statement right here, what I'm about to play you, is 1,000% fact, and why anybody that's saying Breslow's doing a good job is 100% wrong. So let me just play it.
A lot of the guys that we know they were interested in wound up being pretty impactful players.
Pause. Where do we start? Teoscar Hernandez. The biggest problem with the Red Sox is they have no second order thinking. How did you not sign Teoscar Hernandez last offseason? Now, they're interested in Teoscar Hernandez again, right? But now he's got a qualifying offer attached. Last offseason, he didn't have a qualifying offer attached. Instead, they offered him some bullshit 2-year deal that was worth like $32 million. He said, fuck that. I'll take the 1-year deal with the Dodgers, go and win the World Series. Like, here's the difference between Teoscar Hernandez. He was going to give you fucking everything that you needed in terms of a right-handed power hitting bat. And by the way, if you go and look at his savant metrics, which we'll do here in a second, the guy still hasn't really lost any foot speed. Like, his pure running stuff is still there. So it's not like you have a declining athlete on your hands. Like, the biggest problem with Teoscar is, he probably strikes out a little bit more than maybe we would want. But again, Teoscar Hernandez was the guy you were interested in. If you just signed Teoscar Hernandez, you probably make the playoffs. Yamamoto, like, go up and down the list. Right there is the biggest problem. They identified guys that would have really helped this team. They didn't get any of them. Now I'll play. By the way, all the guys they were interested in, who did they get? Giolito. Didn't fucking pitch for the team. Who helped them that he's acquired? O'Neill. Like, who has Breslow acquired that's up this team in a way that, oh my God, man, what would they do without that guy? Other than Tyler O'Neill, who was a capable bat. Breslow hasn't gotten anything fucking right. Now, he identified a bunch of guys that would have helped the team. Didn't get any of them, though. So, now we'll play it.
I think that kind of shapes Breslow going into this winter. Like, he kind of identified the right guy. He just didn't get him.
Yeah, and I think that comes to the biggest issue, I think, this offseason, TC, and I'm sure you've heard it before, and I think I've heard it enough from many different people to believe it. Breslow's job is to convince John Henry that he needs to spend on a particular guy. He needs to convince him that he needs to make this trade. This is the one that's going to put us over the top or whatever. Like, that's the GM's job here at Fenway Park. Theo could do it. Dombrowski could do it. Charrington Bloom, I don't think so. Can Breslow do it? And you're right. He's identified some guys, some impact guys that they didn't end up getting. But he's also had a run here of, like, the sale trade with Grissom, the deadline, the guys he brought in. So that's not exactly on his side, at least Grissom for the current time, right? Who knows what his long term. But he has to convince John that it's time to do it. Maybe Theo Epstein is sitting on his shoulder helping him out. I don't know. But hopefully they can get that done.
Pause. Because that's all that needs to be said. That's all that needs to be said. That right there is a perfect illustration of the job of a general manager. Craig Breslow's job is to go to John Henry and say, I've modeled out the team. We do X, Y, and Z. I need this, this, and this. You're going to fork over the cash. The problem with Breslow is we've seen over and over and over again, by the way he's acted, that he is a bitch. And, I mean, just go look at the guy. I mean, I've posted these videos 700 times. Let me pull this up because it's just, I mean, the guy that's running the team is a literal cunt. That is the biggest problem with the Red Sox. The guy that's running the team is a literal cunt. This guy needs to convince ownership to spend money. That is his job. The guy running the team needs to convince ownership, this is the guy we need. You need to spend X, Y, and Z. Again, Dombrowski was able to do it. Bloom, not so much. That point by Merloni cannot be ignored because, number one, yes, has this ownership cheaped out? 1,000%. But it's up to the guy who builds the team to convince ownership to spend the money. This is the guy running the Red Sox. I mean, unbelievable that anybody would hire this fucking clown to run any multi-billion-dollar organization. I mean, look at the way he addresses the media. Hands in the pockets, crossed legs. This is the cunt running the team. And by the way, he hasn't gotten anything right. Like, he hasn't gotten anything right. The Chris Sale trade was awful. I mean, the Isaiah Campbell thing. I mean, how many relievers did he try to get that didn't fucking work out? DFA'd Caleb Orr, then Caleb Orr Caleb Orr is literally the fucking cherry on top, like we go up and down the list of mistakes that this fucking Breslow has made. He hasn't got anything right. And by the way, all he does is look at his sheet and say, this move gives us a 2.2. Fuck the analytics. Like, this is the truth. The moment that one person with balls enters Major League Baseball and say, I don't give a fuck what any of these numbers say. I'm building a team based off of philosophical principles that we define as organizational success. If we define what the standard of excellence is at every single position and say, this is what we need from our left fielder. He's got to have X, Y, and Z. A, B, and C are non-negotiables. If you go through every single position on your fucking team and you nail all of those things and you scout your own team properly, the person that does that will win a lot. But we don't have that person in charge. We don't have that person in charge. So let me continue here. Again, that point that Merloni made cannot be ignored in all of this. The guy running the team is a complete and utter bitch. And until he proves otherwise, there's no reason to be optimistic about what's going on with the Red Sox. Maybe he will prove otherwise this offseason. But he's had a whole year to show us who he is. And who he has shown us so far is Bloom 2.0. Except Bloom was actually adding prospects. We don't know what the draft track record is going to be for Breslow, but I mean, at least Bloom was adding prospects. I don't know what Breslow has added to the table so far. So let's get into how I would construct the team. Again, if you're not listing out non-negotiables and listing out your standard of excellence for what you want in a left fielder, a center fielder, a right fielder, a shortstop, which I know they're not doing. They're looking at their sheet and said, this guy will give us a XYZ% chance to make the playoffs. That's what they do because they stare at their fucking sheet and there's no accountability with any of that shit, right? They said, well, these moves gave us the best chance to win. We didn't make the fucking playoffs, but the chart said this. So there's no accountability, obviously. So let's get into what I want to talk about next. Again, we talked about you have to convince ownership to spend money. It's time, man. Here's the payroll. Look, I mean, you're not paying anybody, bruh. You're not paying anybody. Look at all these minimum contracts you got on the books. A fuck ton. And by the way, there's some guys on this 40-man roster like Nicky Gaspar. You can DFA. Bailey Horn. You can DFA. Like, Cam Boozer, you could DFA. There's a lot of and Manuel Valdez, you could DFA. There's a lot of guys. Winkowski, he stinks. You could DFA. Cooper, Chris. Like, there's a lot of guys on this 40-man roster that you could DFA with no problem. So don't give me, we can't add because then we're going to lose on the 40-man. Can't make that excuse right now. In fact, I would argue that the overall depth of the 40-man is worse than when you took over because you gave guys away like Matthew Lugo for nonsense, which can't be denied. That's what happened. So, again, all you've done, give away guys like Nick York for nonsense, right? Vaughn Grisham taking up a spot. Why? Because you botched the sale trade. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so approximately, this isn't a defined number, but it's about right. $62 million, a little bit more, under the luxury tax. The first decision of the offseason needs to be this. What is my budget? Are we going over the tax? Are we going way over the tax? Are we going right below the tax? This is the bottom line. Until you get some kind of budget for what you're going to be allowed to spend, you can't do anything. Okay? You can spend, don't get me wrong, but last year they were way under the tax. I mean, way under the tax, which is fucking bullshit. Because if you just spent to the tax and didn't go over, you could have added Teoscar Hernandez, no problem. Instead, now you want Teoscar Hernandez, but now he has a draft pick attached to him. Cool. Way to go. Way to fucking bravo, you idiots. There's no second order thinking in this organization, though. We know that. All right. So you are 62 million under the tax. And again, the number one question is, are you spending to the number? Not going over, but spending to the number? Are you going over? Or are you going to, hey, maybe we go even a little bit above what the first tax number is? Because, again, this team has been under the tax so many years in a fucking row. It's time. You've built up the prospect capital. Meyer, Teal, Anthony, Campbell. You've done all of the rebuild process. It is go time. Now is the time. You have to push your chips in the table, because if you do not, and you fuck up this young core, he's going to get fired too. So, again, it's up to Breslow to convince ownership to spend money. And by the way, they've been under the tax so many fucking years in a row that there really is no excuse. And oh, by the way, you have so much young talent coming in because of what Bloom built up that you have a sustainable organization built in already, even if you spend the money. So let's say, oh, we spend the money, we're over the tax. Okay, who's the next wave of young talent to where, okay, I spent all my money, I can't really add anything after I spend all my money. Who's the secondary reinforcements? Well, I got Meyer, I got Teal, I got Anthony, I got prospects coming. So there ain't no excuse of, oh, well, I spent the money and now I'm still not good enough. Because that's not the case. You spend the money, you should be good enough. Because all of the other things have already been built in. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think let's go to our organizational depth chart here. Where do we stand from an organizational depth chart? What do I need to build? What do I have on my team? If I do X, Y, and Z, life is about choices. You make choices, okay? Where do I allocate my resources? I showed you how much money you got. You got about 70 million or so. Where do I allocate my resources? Who do I spend money on? How do I make the best team possible with what I have been given? So there are inherent truths about this team that cannot be ignored, that need to be fixed. Number one, a lot of lefties. Lot of lefties. Lefty, 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 lefty. A lot of lefties. Probably way too many lefties. But that doesn't even talk about the real problem, because your prospects are lefties too. Here's your catcher, lefty, right? Your catcher's coming, lefty. Campbell's a righty, so that's cool. He'll even things out. But Meyer, lefty. Anthony, lefty. So not only is your team very lefty, the prospects that you envision being part of your team also lefty. So what does this team really need? It needs right-handed dick power bat. Until you get that, you're not going anywhere. That is a non-negotiable, or it should be viewed as a non-negotiable in terms of getting back into contention. I gotta have a right-handed bat. Gotta have. And I'm not just talking any fucking right-handed bat. I'm not just talking some mediocre slapdick right-handed bat. Like, I could bring back O'Neal. I need a motherfucker in the lineup. Let's talk about how you win baseball games. You got to get big dicks in the middle of your bat. That's how you win. I mean, let's talk about the Yankees. That team isn't even good. That Yankees team's not good. Who's good on that Yankees team? Soto, Judge, Stanton. That's why they made the World Series. And Stanton's been super unreliable. But Stanton hit you fucking homers when it counted this postseason. Now, that hasn't really been the case. But for this past postseason, why did the Yankees go to the World Series? Judge, Soto, Stanton. If you don't have some kind of answer to that, you're not going anywhere. You can talk about, let's bring in Willie Adames. No, it doesn't accomplish anything. You need a big dick right-handed power bat. Until you do that, you're not going anywhere. And it should be viewed as a non-negotiable for how to build this team. When were the Red Sox good? And I say this all the time. You need to define the standard of excellence for what you want in each position. When the Red Sox were good, David Ortiz was their bat in the middle of the lineup. And he's always had a sidekick. So the right-handed sidekick was Manny Ramirez. Right now, you have the lefty with Devers. Devers, Ortiz. And I'm not comparing those two. I'm not comparing those two. But there's no question that Devers is your aircraft carrier bat. You need your right-handed aircraft carrier bat. And it sure as fuck ain't Story. It sure as fuck is not an average catcher. And he is your... I mean, I like Rafaela. I mean, this dude fields. And he's so good defensively that I don't even care what he bats. But he's basically your right-handed Jackie Bradley Jr. Where's your right-handed power bat? Until you get that, you're not going anywhere. How do we find a right-handed power bat? Because that's where this conversation should start and end. We got to get a right-handed power bat. How do we fix that problem? I mean, I've told you how to fix that problem 700 times. The answer for the right-handed bat has to be Vlad Guerrero Jr. I mean, it makes way too much sense. If you're looking for who resembles Ortiz in the modern game era, it has to be Vlad. This guy, I mean, he would be perfect. You talking about 2-hole, 3-hole, someone that can go right in between Devers and Cassis. You put a right-handed bat right in between Devers and Cassis. That accomplishes the goal. That's the number one. It has to be the number one thing. Because until you do this, you're not going anywhere. Now, if you can't get Vlad, which I would be calling Shapiro every 5 minutes. Like, I don't know what the Blue Jays are doing. They can convince themselves they're in the mix to sign Ohtani. They can convince themselves they're in the mix to sign Soto. They're not going to get any of them. And really, based off of last year, we know that the Blue Jays aren't any good. They're lying to themselves. Call Shapiro 700 more times. Figure it out. Vlad will be a free agent after the season, a season in which Toronto's not going to be competitive. Get it done. And if you can't get Vlad done for whatever reason, which I'm confident I would be able to pull the trigger on that trade. If you can't get that trade done for whatever reason, there's a couple of fallback options. You're going to have to sign Teoscar this time, which you should have just did it last time. But there's no second order thinking in this organization, and we know they fucked that up. So, has to be Vlad. If it's not Vlad, make up for the mistake you made with Teoscar. If it's not that, maybe you can call San Diego, because a little under talked about story here with San Diego is their owner passed away. Their payroll is way too high. Can you pluck Tatis from the team? Because Preller, he'll trade anybody. This AJ Preller, he'll trade anybody as long as he thinks he's getting a good return. So maybe you could pluck a guy like Tatis. Either way, right-handed bat, got to figure it out. Second, let's share that again. And before we even do that, we could talk about the elephant in the room, and that is Juan Soto. But again, that it really is going to be an ownership decision. It sounds like the Mets are going to get him. Maybe the Yankees get him. We'll see. Either way, there really isn't a ton of risk in signing Soto beyond the fact that he's going to cost a lot of money. But again, Soto is a lefty, so he really only adds on to your problem in terms of having too many lefties. If you somehow get Soto, which I can't imagine it's more than a 10% shot, but maybe he does want to come to Boston and maybe you can figure it out. Again, I don't want to spend more than 2 minutes on this because Breslow, a guy with no balls, there's no way he pulls that off. Trey, if Trey was running, excuse me, if Trey was running the team, I'd give it about a 50% chance I could pull off Soto. But I have no confidence that Breslow can do that. But anyway, we'll walk down the magical fairy tale land. If that happens, you're going to have to move one of these outfielders. Because Soto would be the new left fielder. He wouldn't hit leadoff, but he'd probably be your 2-hole hitter. And then you still need a right-handed bat for your 3-hole hitter. And then Cassis is probably hitting 5th with Devers 4th. But whether it be Duran, Abreu, I think Yoshida probably should be traded anyway. I don't, if he's not going to play the field, I don't know what purpose he serves. But again, going back to Vlad could be your primary DH, but he could also play third when Devers needs a day off, and he could play first when Cassis needs a day off. With Yoshida, they just never put him in the field. So he probably doesn't have a spot anyway. But if you bring in Soto, one of these left-handed hitters probably needs to be moved. Anyway, who I would probably move Duran, but that's controversial. And we don't even need to talk about that because, again, the guy running the Red Sox, he's a bitch. He doesn't have what it takes to pull that off. So let's keep things moving. Next order of business that you have to figure out. Here's your rotation. Now, Giolito should be healthy this year. Whitlock should go to the bullpen. Really, you need 1 or 2 starters, probably 2 starters, because who knows when Giolito's going to be healthy, and can you really even count on him? I would guess not. You need 2 starters. Here's your list. Pivetta declined the qualifying offer. That's huge for a number of different reasons. Number 1 being that you already secured a draft pick. So if you sign a different guy that declined one of these, it makes up for it because you already have this draft pick for Pivetta declining. So if you sign, let's say, a Max Fried, yes, you'll lose one of your own draft picks, but you'll still recoup one for Pivetta. So this right here is a huge key to the offseason. You need pitching in the worst way possible. Figure out who you want on this list. And there's a lot of names. Personally, the way that I would go, I think Max Fried is probably the best option. Let's pull up his Savant numbers because I think this absolutely would be the ideal target. And it's kind of the opposite problem for what you have in terms of the lineup. So if you go to the rotation, Houck's a righty, Bayo's a righty, Crawford's a righty, Fitz and Criswell will probably start in AAA. Giolito's a righty. In your prospect pool, some of your call-ups, righty, and Penrod is a reliever. So you really have no left-handed starter. You don't have a left-handed starter. Max Fried sure solves that problem. And by the way, I think this is someone that fits into Fenway Park very, very nicely for a bunch of different reasons. Number 1 reason being 96th percentile in terms of ground ball percentage. Fenway Park, we know a lot of those cheap little dinky fly balls at the left field that maybe otherwise would be caught hit the green monster. Guys that keep the ball on the ground usually have the most success at Fenway from years of watching the team. Fried would be perfect. Fried would be absolutely perfect. Exit velocity creates a lot of weak contact. Great. Creates a lot of balls or ground balls. Great. He just doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, which is what's going to keep the price tag down. But I think he fits the ballpark perfectly, and you don't have a lefty. And by the way, if you just go to some of his, just basic standard number. And by the way, this is a guy, he's got a deep arsenal. He's got a 4-seamer, a curveball, a sinker, a changeup, a cutter, a slider, a sweeper. if the entire brand of this offseason is we trust our pitching lab, figure it out. Come up with the best game plan. Figure it out. This is a guy who's got a ton of pitches at his disposal. And by the way, if you just go to his basic numbers, it is very risky to dip into the pitching market. We totally understand that. But if you're going to invest in somebody, man, isn't this as consistent as it gets? 325, 255, 248, 340, 225. I mean, his worst year is 402. Worst year. And he had 173 strikeouts that year. His worst year. So I think Fried's perfect. Like, I don't know how else to say that. I think Fried's perfect. Pay the money. Pay the money. And by the way, I talked about this in a separate article. Maybe I'll link it. We'll see. But Westlake High School, Giolito, same school, internal recruiter. I don't know if I shared this tab correctly, but ground ball rate, exit velocity. He fits Fenway Park perfectly. Then once you do that, basically I think you need one more guy. Figure it out. Can you get into the Sasaki mix? Again, Breslow, have no confidence that he can win a recruiting battle like that. But Trey would try his best. Sasaki, Evaldi, Walker Buehler, Shane Bieber. I think you got to sign two. And then Giolito comes in as your, I don't know when he'll be ready. March 12th is when he got hurt. Maybe he's ready for May. I don't know for sure, but let's count on him as their late season pickup, right? You add Max Fried right at the top, and I think bringing back Evaldi would make a ton of sense. If that's your rotation here with Fitz as a call-up, I think you're sitting pretty. Then, basically, I think you're looking at Hendricks for your closer. He's your setup guy. Whitlock should go back to the pen. And basically, you're looking at maybe one more reliever in terms of, okay, this is your new Joely Rodriguez. That's been taken care of. I think you need one more bullpen piece. Do you bring Martin back? Do you sign Jeff Hoffman? Can you pull off a trade for Devin Williams? I think that might be a target because the Brewers, they just declined his club option, but he had one more year of arbitration. It's going to be around $8 million. I think they would move him. You have a ton of prospects at your disposal in terms of creating a trade. That would be a target of mine too. So I think you need one or two bullpen arms, probably two starters, and a right-handed bat. I mean, the rest, really, you go through. Maybe we can update on where things stand prospect-wise, but you have guys at your disposal. I mean, these guys are off limits. Montgomery was just your first-round pick. But again, you have pieces to construct a trade, whether it be, hey, can we move Abreu, Arias, Fitz, I don't know, in a Vlad trade? Can we add something for Tatis? Can we maybe throw, I don't know, Welcome and Gonzalez and a couple more pieces for Devin Williams? You have guys here. You have guys. So before I kind of wrap things up here, the easiest way to do this, and you never know who's going to be available in a trade. Maybe you can somehow get like a Logan Gilbert out there. One thing I would add is this Garrett Crochet. So I wrote this article back in June. His price tag went way through the roof. Now, I think I could have got him back in June. But now, if you want Garrett Crochet, you're going to have to pay out the ass. And that's just not something I'm willing to do. So, again, I would have loved to have Garrett Crochet back in June. His price tag is going to go way up. So, I don't think that's even an option anymore. Maybe a Logan Gilbert's available. Who knows what you can do in the trade market. But this, and we'll close with this. This is basically how you're going to construct your team. He's your leadoff guy. Devers is either your 2 or 4 hitter. Can you get Soto? I doubt it, but then you need your right-handed bat right here. Story, he's not your long-term shortstop. That's Meyer. DH, again, I think you needed a right-handed bat. That would be where he plays. And I think you should probably trade Yoshida anyway. Abreu, he just won the Gold Glove. I think he can handle right field. I wouldn't really move him unless you really had to, which I wouldn't trade him. I think his approach at the plate's really good. Now you have to platoon him, but that's what you have Ref Snyder for. Against lefties, you probably have to sit him, but you can play him most of the time against righties. So, and he can field really well. I think he's only going to get better. Power numbers need to come along a little bit. But I think we're moving in the right direction. Age 25. If he gets another step or 2 better, you're good there. Then your catching tandem, which I'm for upgrading the catcher spot. Like, if you can trade Wong, get an upgrade here, I'm not opposed to it. But Teal is really your long-term catcher. And then Campbell is probably your second baseman, with Rafaela being your modernized Jackie Bradley, who can also play shortstop in a pinch. So you insert Meyer here. Anthony somewhere here in the equation for the outfield. Teal. And then really, you got to do some work in the pitching front. That's your team. I mean, this really shouldn't be that hard. Like, it really shouldn't be that hard. It's a matter of, again, I shared that clip at the start. It couldn't be further from it. I mean, it's 100% factual. He has to convince ownership to spend money. And it should be really easy. Trade for Vlad. Can you get Soto? Max Fried, Evaldi, Walker Buehler, Bieber, Teoscar Hernandez. Figure it out. Figure it out. But we'll see. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you want me to do any other teams, comment. I'm open to the comments. I'm open to the feedback. And peace out, Girl Scout. We'll see you next time.